This is your home for St. Cloud State hockey, keeping you up to date on the NCHC.
One-timer coming, they score! Ripped in! A bomb from Pervix!
Women's WCHA.
So Dana Rasmussen fires and she scores! Dana Rasmussen for the Huskies alongside
The National Hockey League.
Dwayne Kaprizov in for a chance to win it! He scores! Kirill, the thrill is for real! Welcome to the NHL, a game winner!
And everything from the state of hockey.
St. Cloud Cathedral is now 42.6 seconds away from wrapping up the school's first ever title.
Welcome to the Huskies Warming House Podcast Den. And welcome into episode number 135 here on the Huskies Warming House Podcast. It is Halloween here on this Monday when you'll be listening. Noah Grant alongside Nick Maxon as always. Nick, it's spooky season, as the kids say.
It's always spooky season.
Yeah,
where I live.
Well, that's because you have a mirror.
That's exactly what it is.
No black cats though. Hopefully. You did get clawed in the face, apparently. But,
I did, yes.
That notwithstanding, the Huskies got a bit of a scare. Men's hockey this weekend.
They did.
So we'll talk about that in the main portion of the show. Women's hockey, we said they had to have both of them. They had both of them. Really excited to talk about this team. The race in the WCHA is getting tighter and tighter by the minute. As far as Huskies Illustrated Weekly Roundup, we have retirement that's a bit close to home, so to speak, that we'll talk about. Rip through that very quickly. A very abbreviated Huskies Illustrated Weekly Roundup this week. And then the Extra Ice session. We're going to talk about our first impressions of Mullet Arena. The Coyotes, their first couple of home games in the building. Locker room setup notwithstanding for the first couple of games. Anyway, with that being said, we will start, as always, with Center Ice View News and Notes and the Huskies Illustrated Weekly Roundup. Center Ice View News and Notes. Center Ice View provides you with the best coverage of St. Cloud State Huskies hockey, from game notes, recaps, photos, and more. Go to centericeview.com.
Huskies Illustrated Weekly Roundup, Noah, and this is kind of a weird news thing, right? Because I've seen Devin Dubnyk, as we're going to touch on why we're talking about him shortly, on NHL Network. And I thought that maybe I had missed this earlier, that this was already official, but now it actually is. He's actually officially now just retiring from his playing career. And again, had some notable seasons with both Minnesota as well as Edmonton, where he got his start. Had some bits and pieces with Nashville, Arizona, and Colorado. But quite the career, 12 NHL seasons, 253 wins, a .914 career save percentage, 33 shutouts. He spent parts of 6 seasons with the Minnesota. Of course, the most notable when he was picked up in the trade deadline in 2015. This is when he won the Masterton Trophy, also finished 3rd in the Vezina, also 4th in Hart voting. Dare I say, Noah, he single-handedly willed that team back in the playoff race.
Yeah.
It was also a second-team All-Star with a .929 save percentage in that year and a 2.07 goals against average in 58 games. Just was a workhorse. It never posted a save percentage below .913 in his next 4 seasons with the Wild. Also ranks now in franchise records only second behind Nicholas Backstrom with wins at 177 and shutouts with 23 in franchise history. Also had a pretty good .917 save percentage with Edmonton. And mind you, this is an Edmonton team pre-Connor McDavid, so they weren't that great.
Yeah, they were bad.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, 3 years in Edmonton. Don't forget, also played in San Jose as well too. Had a short list, and of course he was traded there for. Do you know who he was traded for? You remember?
Ryan Donato.
That is correct.
Yeah.
Or with Ryan Donato, right? 4. Yeah. No.
It'd be with somebody if they were both going to San Jose.
Yeah, that's right. Anyway, with that being said,
you're the hockey guy. It's okay.
Yeah, well, no, this just doesn't seem. Why do I feel like that's not right though? Because Ryan,
you're traded for somebody.
No, we got Ryan Donato from the Bruins. Remember?
That's right. So it's not. So it's
I gotta
not,
look it up. It's gonna drive me nuts. Devin Dubnyk trade. God, who do we trade for? Was it just
this
draft pick?
picks?
I think
Or wasn't it picks?
it was a summer thing. I think it was just like a low round pick.
It was almost like a dump, wasn't it?
Here we go. For a 5th round pick.
It was a cap. Yep, it was
in 2022. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the Wild gained $2.166 million in cap space, which I'm sure they've utilized that effectively.
And then still I got some left over. So yeah.
You know, it's interesting though. I mean, I have a Devin Dubnyk shirt in my closet among the skeletons this Halloween, but you know, we kind of give him crap on the podcast about, you know, I think maybe his last year and a half in Minnesota was a bit tough, kind of started to drop off a little bit. But you know what? Like you mentioned, that first season, of course, he got on the plane essentially from Buffalo, or got on the plane and was playing in Buffalo the next night, willed that team to a victory and never looked back. I mean, he had some really formidable years in Minnesota. Were they bolstered by an otherworldly defensive structure that Minnesota ran at the time? Sure.
Probably.
But he played well on a really crappy Oilers team for 3 seasons. I mean, he played 12 years in the NHL. He played, half of 1,000 games and change, right? So, you know, it's a pretty successful career for him, all things considered. Probably one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. Great family as well, too. So, I mean, he was a joy to have in Minnesota. I think he just he kind of overexceeded expectations early. And then in his last year and a half, you know, it was easy to kind of peg him as someone who was really struggling, maybe wasn't at his form. But really, I mean, he was a guy that you look at his underlying numbers, actually had a pretty serviceable NHL career and largely as a starter for half of it.
And let's not forget, too, Noah, that, you know, the last year and a half with Minnesota, there was some, shall we say, out of the rink distractions. I guess White was sick. There was a bunch of things out of his control that you hate to say it, but I think just as far as him performing on the ice, I do think it affected him. And we both know as athletes, you know, they're creatures of confidence and momentum. And it just seemed like Devin Dubnyk, once the train started to go off the rails, he just never seemed to really get it back on the tracks. And it was tough to see, to be honest with you, because, again, he brought stability to an organization. Again, this is still Zach Parise. This is year 3 into that, you know, big investment that this was going to be a team that we're going to put together to go on a deep cup run. And remember, the Wild at that time were struggling hard. And so he essentially came in and, shall we say, he saved the season, righted the ship. So he gave the fans of the organization that new breath of fresh air. So can't forget that part.
Yeah, and that was the time where, of course, we were kind of just entering the years where we didn't know that Zach Parise had a lingering back injury for about 3.5 years that kind of halted that too. By the way, speaking of Zach Parise, random tangent that's not in our notes, he scored last night or 2 nights ago. Did you see the comeback the Islanders had last night?
Scoring
5 unanswered against the defending Stanley Cup champ Colorado Avalanche in that game, and it was all, besides the first goal, everything was within the last 12 minutes of period number 3. It reminds me of when the Wild came back all those years ago against the Hawks back in 2010. Guillaume Latendresse tied that game up, and then I think it was it John Madden
in the shootout. I remember that clear because Latendresse had just come off the bench, and it was a puck loose in the corner, popped out. He just took a swing at it.
Yeah,
and wasn't that Cristobal Huet that was in that? I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. Well, as Mike Greenley had alluded to, he was like, I mean, he said it himself, he came out of absolutely nowhere. I mean, just shifted through. I don't know if it was Huey or wasn't it Antti Niemi?
It wasn't Niemi, no. It was either
Niemi was on that team in 2010.
He was, but I believe it was Huey that was in net.
Should we research it? We can. You've got one more point, so go for it and let us know what's next. I'll research.
Yeah, you do that. So another quick signing. The Ottawa Senators signing Mark Kastelich to a 2-year extension, Kastelich, excuse me. 835K per season. 6'3", 210 pounds, 23 years of age. 6 points in 22 NHL games. So why the extension? He's pretty good in the faceoff dot, 71 and some change percent in the dot. That's not bad faceoff numbers. A 5th rounder in 2019 to his credit, and also has a little bit of sandpaper to his game. Not afraid to drop the mitts, not afraid to mix things up, as well as protect teammates. So Sens adding a little bit of depth to the organization where they seem to be getting a little bit of snake bit with some injuries here and there. Which the Wild are actually getting some of that too as well. But did you figure out who was in net?
I did. It was Cristobal Huey, so you were right about that. Yeah, okay, you remembered one thing in the 3 years we've been doing this show. So
more than that, but okay.
Yeah, I don't know about that. So goal scorers in the shootout were Mikko Koivu, and it wasn't John Madden. It was Owen Nolan who had the game winner that night.
Was it Owen Nolan?
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, I'm looking at the recap, so yes. And other goal scorers for Minnesota, Kim Janssen.
Oh, Kimmy. Yeah.
Mikko Koivu again, Marek Zidlicki.
Yeah.
And Guillaume Latendresse.
Yeah.
Marty Havlat also scored.
That's
for
right. Those two had quite the chemistry, Latendresse and Havlat. I was actually pegging Latendresse after that season that he kind of broke after we got traded from Montreal, that he was going to be the next 30 goal scorer for the Wild, and didn't happen.
Yeah, Patrick Sharp, Jonathan Taves, Chris Versteeg, Troy Brouwer, Marian Hossa scoring in regulation. Patrick Kane scoring the only goal in the shootout. It's interesting too. So Nicholas Backstrom started in net for the Wild. The game was finished by Josh Harding.
Mm-hmm.
Who was the coach for Minnesota that year?
This is 2010, is that Todd Richards?
It was Todd Richards.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. That's all.
That's two for those keeping track just for this episode.
I mean, are we counting that? I mean, geez, you were you were my age during that time.
And I covered the Todd Richards press conferences. I was covering the Wild pretty extensively at that time. So I was, that was fresh. I do remember that game. That was,
I still remember it all those years later. I mean, we were coming back from a hockey game. It was like on a Saturday night or something. And we were coming back from some game up in Canada, and we were listening to it on the radio, and we kind of had it on the background. And then you started to kind of like pick up on it as the game went along. And then we got home and watched the highlights, which of course, back in that day, I mean, you had YouTube, but it wasn't instant packaging even on Twitter like it is now. So you kind of had to wait for the TV highlights and the 11 o'clock news, basically. So it was pretty impressive. Two more topics here in the early parts of our show. Some quick trades here going on. Ethan Bear, defenseman, headed to Vancouver for a 5th rounder back to the Hurricanes. Only 25 years old, has been a healthy scratch every game this season. 47 points in 190 NHL games. He has strong underlying numbers offensively as a defenseman. Maybe some defensive lapses, but I'm not surprised the Canucks took a chance on him. Good little defenseman there. Canucks also got forward Jack Studnicka, and the Bruins on the other side for Boston got goaltender Michael DiPietro. Take a guess whose kid he is. And I heard he got signed to a long-term contract, this father figure. And defenseman Jonathan Myrenberg. Studnicka heading to the Canucks. He's 23, 53rd overall pick, 38 NHL games in the past 4 seasons. DiPietro has played 3 NHL games. His father, of course, played a little bit more until he cashed his money out. And then Myrenberg, 19 years old. He's playing in Sweden right now. He was 140th overall last season in the NHL draft. So
can I pause you real quick there, Noah, because this is an interesting move by Vancouver, don't you think?
It is?
I think it is. Let's look at the actual talent here, right? Studnicka, only 38 games in over 4 years of his NHL career. DiPietro, I get he's young, he's 23. Myrenberg, again, 19. Does this signal something to you? Because mind you, Vancouver has been off to actually their worst start in franchise history, record-wise, at least for the first 6 or 7 games. They've sort of turned it up lately, but is this sort of a GM and a Canucks organization that is sort of showing some reflexes here? And I ask that because that's a lot of capital going your way this early in the season. Now, granted, it is future capital for all intents and purposes, but many people were tagging the Canucks as, oh gosh, are they going to have to, type in the codes already? Or what do you think? Is this just, you see some opportunity you're going for it, or do you think there's some little bit more underlying notes to this?
I mean, I think Ethan Bear and Studnicka are probably guys that are a little more known in what you're going to get out of them. And maybe they're betting on that, just looking for some solidarity. Maybe, if anything, at the AHL level, feeling like they can add some bodies that they feel would be appropriate call-ups because they know what type of game they play. Ethan Bear might get some playing time this year. I mean, that defense in Vancouver is very poor. I've never understood. I mean, he's an NHLer for sure, but Tyler Myers to me has been an absolute pylon for the last like 4 years in my mind. He takes really dumb penalties and is always out of position, I think. I mean, he's a big body, and he's still a serviceable NHL defenseman, but I've never understood how much trust they put in a guy like him. But I mean,
he's never the strongest skater too, and I think that was the biggest thing is his reach, and he could back in his early days. Remember with Buffalo, he was actually quite the sort of the physical force on their blue line.
Yeah,
and then as the game has gotten much faster from him, that's when you start reaching. You know how it goes, and like you said, he's shall we say the game is spinning circles around him, unfortunately. So
yeah, well, let's spin our circle all the way around here. Our last trade, forward Cam Hillis is headed to Montreal. Defenseman Nick Bowden back to Chicago. I like this little move by Chicago here. First, Hillis, a 66th overall pick, made his NHL debut last season in Montreal. And then Bowden, he's 23, 27th overall pick back in 2018, has 22 NHL games to his credit. He won gold of the 2021 Worlds for Canada, playing in all 10 games. I think he was -4, but still, still won. So, what would be not winning, essentially, injury wire here. Mark Borowiecki is still out day to day after getting knocked out last Saturday in that game for Nashville. Kind of an awkward little play. I don't know if it was the fact that he actually hit the dasher awkwardly, or it looked like he hit his face pretty hard. So on the ice. So I think that was kind of the secondary hit that really kind of didn't go so well for him. He was at home and resting, but they haven't really cleared him yet. So you got to wonder if there's some underlying concussion things going on there. Senators, Josh Norris, he's going to be out long-term with a shoulder injury, could need surgery, will likely miss most of the season. He's going to miss at least 5 months, so not looking good for the Sens there.
No.
Flyers, Sean Couturier, he undergoes another back surgery.
Yeah. Jeez, that's tough.
Yeah, he's going to be out 3 to 4 months. And Quinn Hughes for Vancouver week to week with a lower body injury. Episode number 135, main portion of the show. Nick Maxon, Griswold, whatever you want to call him. He's joining myself, Noah Grant, whatever you want to call me. What do you want to call me? You have a name in mind? That's appropriate for the FCC airways.
It is definitely not appropriate, so I'll hold that one back.
Well, welcome in. It is Halloween here for those joining us on the YouTube channel. We've got a fun little graphic. We've changed up the look for this episode, so go check it out or don't, whatever. I made it. I'm happy with it, so it's fine. Nick Maxon is not with me in Minot here this week, but he's with me in spirit at least.
Spirit of Halloween.
Halloween. Any big Halloween plans this year, Nick?
Well, if anything, it was today, actually. Headed to the Vikings game, first ever game inside U.S. Bank Stadium. And how funny is this? It's been, gosh, I'm going to really date myself here, 10 years since I've been to a Viking game. So it's back in the old Metrodome. Yeah. And it was against the Cleveland Browns. And what you know, they lost to the Cleveland Browns in that game. And it wasn't even close. It was like 41-24. If I remember, like we got smoked. Yeah. And in typical Vikings fashion today, when they had every opportunity to put the game away, they kept Arizona in it. We had in this game a blocked field goal, a missed extra point, a muffed punt. Kirk Cousins ran for a 19-yard touchdown. Yes, you heard that. He ran for more than 3 yards.
Someone must have came at him with a vaccine needle.
Something. It was a little bit of everything. It was actually quite the show. And Vikings improved to 6-1. Yeah. So that's always I'm still not on the train.
You said that to me last week. You're like, I still don't think they'll make the playoffs.
No,
I'm like, man, dude.
They're just, and they're a lot. This was the referee crew was very flag happy today. There was some definitely questionable PIs on both sides of the ball. A lot of investigating, huh? A lot of ref ball. I'll put it to you that way. Angel Hernandez would be happy with this. So I don't know. I can't be fully because they look good in the first half. They stumble in the third. And again, just the way that they just don't seem to have a killer instinct where they can't have a clean 60 minutes of football. I just can't get invested because the Vikings fan, me, it's AKA 98. Yes, Michael Vick, 2009. Of course, what do you call it? Basically ankle gate with Brett Favre. I've been hurt way too many times, so I can't get on board. But it does make my heart beat that Green Bay is getting their butts handed to them by the Buffalo Bills. Holy cow, they're looking solid.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting, just Minnesota sports just never fail to amaze us, right? It's I mean,
Yeah, no, it's but it was fun. That was
yeah.
sort of the game plan for Halloween.
Well,
And
well, you mentioned the discombobulation and the fluctuation and the start and this and that. For a second, I thought you were talking about the Duluth Bulldogs, and their hockey team. But
I mean, one, I could see where that would get mixed up, Noah.
you
But
know, it's well, the difference is the home team won this time. But like,
yeah, that's true.
speaking of
Ouch.
hockey, NCAA wise, WCHA wise, everything's going crazy here. I mean,
The
how fitting.
non-conference this year has been, throw everything. It's almost like how Midwesterners make a casserole. It's like throw whatever the hell you have in the cupboard, throw some sauce and some cheese on it, bake it, and be like, okay, let's see what the hell happens. And this is what we're getting.
Well, last week was really the first slate that we got started for a lot of conference games too, and we had a lot of craziness going on this week even too. So, yeah, I mean, Halloween special, obviously here on the Huskies Warming House podcast. It is interesting, by the way, Nick. I forgot to mention this to you. Of course, you joined me last week for the Minot Minotauros game, right? Of course, they swept Bismarck this weekend. We actually have an ad spot on the Minotauros airwaves now. In fact, two of them. We now sponsor the media timeouts for the Minotauros, and we have intermission ad spot as well too. So free of charge even. How about that? So
how'd you swing that one?
Something about working for the team.
Is that a non-disclosure agreement?
Yeah. Oof. Anyway, well, what I will disclose to you is
just don't allow
don't dig yourself into.
No, I'm just. What's the attorney, Michael? Don't let Michael Cohen, to run the check over. I'll just say it that much.
I'm just here. I just designed the graphics and pumped the episode out. But speaking of getting pumped, Minnesota Golden Gophers. Let's start with some Big Ten conference play, losing on night number 1 to Ohio State, 6-4 in night number 1. They did redeem themselves a 4-2 victory in night number 2. They did not throw any sticks in the crowd. We didn't talk about that last week. I totally forgot about that. And someone was asking why we didn't talk about that big play. So, first of all, your impressions of the Ohio State stuff. But do you want to talk about the thing from North Dakota from last week?
Briefly, honestly, that's just, it's a young player making a immature type decision. And this is what you can get from a younger club, right? It's the checking of the emotions.
Does this go back to the whole, like, you remember when Cody Eakin, and Joe Pavelski, and it was that. Like, why would you make a play like that? But is it that, or is it more, how did you blow the lead that you had after that?
Well, I think it's because you have two emotional extremes, right? You have the jubilation of the goal. You feel like you're on top of the world. You throw your stick and you think it's harmless, and all of a sudden you get a 10-minute misconduct, and all of a sudden you take what you thought was really cool and really fun into I got to set 10 minutes. What the hell is this, right? And what you see with young teams is something like that, for some odd reason, just seems to throw them off of balance. And I just feel like the Gophers just got out of sync from that. It really affected them more than it should, right? Yeah. But from all the hockey that you and I have witnessed and played in, sometimes those little things add up to big results, big consequences, right? I just kind of feel like that was the spark. Now, you could make the argument, okay, it's a sticko in the stands. You got to get a 10-minute misconduct in. Okay, stupid, but, let bygones be bygones. But again, to me, that's a symptom, an expression of a young club that's still trying to figure out how to manage their emotions in a college hockey game. Again, there's no denying the skill that the Gophers display. I think we're all on board with that. But again, what we've seen with super teams in the past, haven't we seen some of that before? Oh geez,
probably one of the best decors we've seen in University of Minnesota Golden Gopher history. They are that really good. Surprised that they lost to Ohio State this week, though.
I think Ohio State's slightly underrated. I don't mean that they're on the same level as the Gophers. I'm not, but I do think they have a sneaky way of just hanging in. But let's also not forget that when you give them an opportunity to hang around too, they have the ability to take advantage of it.
6 goals though,
yeah. And there's still some questions in between, the red iron pipes with the Gophers too. So
well, as I say, just keep it close, right? Bada boom, bada bing.
I see what you did there.
Wow. This just in. Penn State.
This just in. I want a refund.
Yeah. Well, sorry. We get our ad spots for free. Penn State, 2-1 victory and 4-0 sweep versus Wisconsin, which is great for them because now they have an edge on the Bulldogs if they get close to them in the pairwise. We are also going to talk about the pairwise a little bit this week, by the way.
Yes,
first week that we're going to do that.
Yeah.
So, I'm surprised and not surprised all at once. Penn State is all right, but it's hard to really gauge them right now because they haven't really played anybody that has been crazy. But like I said, I mean, Penn State beat Wisconsin. Wisconsin beat Duluth. Wisconsin gave St. Cloud a run for their money. Like, hockey world's crazy already, man.
It is. And Penn State is a very high octane offense right now. They're throw anything, and I think they were averaging, if I saw correctly, like 35 to 36 shots a game. Now, granted, are they coming from all high danger areas? Probably not, but it seems to be that their, modus operandi is to throw it on net and dig for the loose change and pop the second and third chance opportunities. And it seems to be working at least early. And again, the competition they have played so far, maybe not grade A type, but the schedule will eventually catch up to them, and a true measuring stick for them will be coming here as Big Ten conference play continues to roll through.
Yeah, Notre Dame 5-1 victory and a 1-1 tie versus Michigan State. Good to see Michigan State bounce back in night number 2. Kind of an intriguing little result there. Over to the CCHA 2.0, Mankato 3-2 victory on Friday versus Bowling Green in overtime, and then a 4-2 finish in night number 2. This Bowling Green team I don't think is half bad this year. They've had some ups and downs early, but they're certainly a dark horse candidate in the CCHA, I think, to maybe be a top 3 team.
Yep.
Yeah, so Ferris State 3-2 victory in overtime in night number 1, and then St. Thomas victory for them in night number 2, a 5-2 score for the Tommies. You love to see it.
How about that? First ever Division I win in their history came last year at Ferris State, and their first win of the season comes against Ferris State. So, and again, they could have had both had it not been for an overtime winner by the Bulldogs there from Ferris State. So St. Thomas, I don't know if you want to say they're pulling things together because, again, Ferris, they're not a bad squad. Are they a top tier squad? No, but it's
Penn State a run for their money last week.
They did, and it's and again, it's about how do we carry that momentum until one weekend from another. How do we continue to do things that make us successful, clean up some other things that are holding us back? There's some potential, shall we say, fire brewing for St. Thomas that they can keep the train rolling.
Yeah, certainly. Alaska Fairbanks, 2-1 victory for them Friday, 3-2 loss against Northern Michigan on Saturday. Just another score to keep an eye on as we've had a lot of teams playing each other here. No scores from the ECAC, not really many big matchups that I don't think will come out of there this year that we'll talk about, but we'll let you know when they happen. Hockey East, though, had some real interesting stuff for us here. Let's start, I believe, on Thursday. Connecticut 5, Boston College 1. This
UConn team's no joke.
Yeah.
They're no joke.
Yeah. They're a good hockey team. I'm very curious to see what they're going to do. I believe they have Maine next week, and Maine had some common opponents. So on Friday and Saturday, UMass Lowell, a 2-1 victory against BU in night number 1, and BU a 2-1 victory in overtime on the other side in night number 2. So UMass and BU, UMass Lowell team that we're paying attention to as well. And then how about UMass? That's just UMass, no extra letters on the end.
Not the state of hockey.
Yeah. 3-2 victory in overtime against Merrimack, and then Merrimack a 2-1 victory against them in overtime. UMass has had some common opponents, notably the Denver Pioneers this season. So, like I said, the college hockey world, this is the first year that we're starting to really see a lot of games cross country again. And usually that kind of makes it easy to evaluate where we're at as far as certain leagues or certain, teams that we think are high up. That confuddling, man, more and more confusion as we're getting these teams that are certainly giving teams a run for their money. Atlantic Hockey, only notable here, RIT 5, Holy Cross 2 in night number 1, and then a 3-2 victory for RIT in overtime in night number 2. RIT and Holy Cross have both had common opponents that relate back to our neck of the woods on the western side. And then Independent Lindenwood, we've been keeping an eye on them. They won 7-3 on Friday night, but then lost 3-1 against Bentley in night number 2. Don't forget, Bentley also, I believe, beat Ohio State earlier this season.
Yes, they did.
Did I tell you it was crazy? It's crazy.
Nuts.
It is nuts. Okay, well, Big Ten, we've got 3 matchups that we're going to pay attention to this week. Tell me which one you're most looking forward to, Nick. Wisconsin is traveling to Michigan State. Notre Dame will be at Minnesota, and Michigan and Penn State will be matching up.
Irish and Gophers. Again, it was the Irish that, with their defensive games, shut out UND, meaning the Fighting Hawks last year. I should say last spring. I say last year, and it's only been 6 months. It's weird. In the NCAA tournament. So Notre Dame, kind of inconsistent at the moment, but they have shown that they can provide some offense. Again, 5 goals in their Friday night victory just this past weekend. I think that's a good measuring stick for both squads, at least as Big Ten is concerned. And then can Wisconsin, I mean, I think they're all intriguing, to be honest with you. Wisconsin, can they keep, things rolling up against Michigan State that had a pretty good weekend? And then
I could see a split in that series.
I could see that. Yeah. And then Michigan, Penn State, again, Michigan, holy buckets. There's some firepower up there.
And we're going to find out how good are the Nittany Lions.
Yeah. The first real big test of the year. Mm-hmm.
Certainly would agree. CCHA 2.0, we've got a lot of matchups to talk about. Alaska Anchorage will travel to Air Force for some non-conference action. Pay attention to that one, though, of course. Anchorage beating Western Michigan earlier this season, as well as NMU, and Air Force had a matchup with CC last weekend that we'll touch on a little bit later, so pay attention to that one. Michigan Tech traveling to Bowling Green. This Michigan Tech team is no slouch of a team either. Had a good weekend again last weekend. I believe at Lake Superior, but I can't remember for certain. They'll travel to Bowling Green, who's had a decent start to the year. Ferris State will travel to Bemidji State. Huskies fans keeping an eye on that one now more than they probably want to.
Probably.
Minnesota State Mankato will travel to St. Thomas. They'll get the Tommies next weekend. That'll be the fun matchup of the Purples. And then Northern Michigan will travel to Lake Superior State next weekend. ECAC, we do have a matchup to talk about. Cornell will travel to Quinnipiac on Saturday only, I believe, because I think one of those two teams has a different opponent on Friday night. But Cornell, of course, just getting off their matchup, I believe, with Duluth. Yep. And then Quinnipiac, of course, had a matchup against North Dakota a couple weeks ago. So that will kind of give us a gauge as to where those two teams might be at. Boston College, Saturday matchup against Merrimack. We're going to look to see how this BC team fares against the Merrimack team, who gave UMass a run for their money this weekend. And then Maine, of course, will travel to the University of Connecticut, and RIT Saturday, Sunday against AIC. Keep an eye on that one. NCHC action. Let's talk about some scores here a little more in depth now that we actually know these teams a bit better here, Nick. Let's start Denver at Miami, our first conference games of the year in the NCHC. DU a sweep 4-0 and 4-2. I think it was 2-0 after 2 periods in night number 1, and then it was, I think, like 3-1 or something after the period 2 and night number 2. This Miami team, though, Nick, I got to be honest, they might not finish dead last in the NCHC this year. They have impressed me coming out of the gate.
Well, let's put it this way. They, granted, going up against the defending national champions, who also still a very good team in the Pioneers. But for Miami, remember, they got thrashed last year in a lot of their weekend series. So the score, 4-0, then 4-2, I think was the the weekend split, meaning the score split, I should say. But they hung in there, and they're battling. Again, when I spoke to their captain, I'm forgetting the name of the gentleman. I do apologize on that for Miami, but he said, "Hey, we've had a culture change in our locker room, and we're not going to go down without a fight. We got the right pieces in place." And it certainly shows. Again, Denver's a tough opponent. We know the skill they have up and down the lineup. So good to see Miami at least, making them earn it for the 60 minutes. And I do think that as we go through, you're absolutely right. I think right now, shall we say, is Omaha the team that might be the one that slips?
Actually, Omaha, we'll get to this in a moment. They're actually doing all right. They're 4-3 right now. So night number 2 for Miami, they were down 2-0 entering period number 3, and Denver scored with 3 minutes and change left, and then with 2 minutes left in that hockey game. So basically a 2-0 hockey game through much of that game. This was Friday, and then Saturday, that 4-2 final. Let's take a look. Same kind of story here. Miami scored first, then Denver, then Miami, then Denver. So Miami actually carried a lead into period number 3.
Mm-hmm.
And then just after halfway, Denver got the go-ahead marker, and then Denver scoring with a minute and change left. So, I mean, they were in both of these hockey games.
Yes, they were.
I would be curious to see the box score. Shots 42-20 on night number 2 for Denver, which isn't that surprising, I guess. But and then night number 1, that 4-0 victory for Denver, shots 38-24, but still almost putting up 10 shots a period, 5 to 10 shots a period, I guess. So Denver making strides. I think. Next matchup, Western Michigan was at and versus Michigan, and the Wolverines. Boy, was this a barn burner of a series. Michigan getting both of them 5-4 in night number 1, and then 6-5 in overtime. The Wolverines eke out the win against the Lawson Lunatics in Kalamazoo. Geez. Well, first of all, the game actually happened.
Yeah. But beat me to my punchline, but thanks.
Yeah, but then they were really good hockey games.
They were, and again, the offense on both sides. Again, on display, really. I know that Michigan gets a lot of accolades for some of the top end talent, but let's not forget, ever since Pat Ferschweiler took over for Andy Murray, Western Michigan has, shall we say, sort of gotten away from a little bit more of that sandpaper style, and they've got some skill and some scoring touch. A big reason why they got as far as they did, as far as setting some school records and getting to places that had been before last year, meaning to the NCAA tournament, winning also a game as well. So that's, again, it's 1-goal games against one of the better top-ended teams in the country. That's not you're not going to like the win-loss record, but you have to like the battle. You have to like how close those games were.
Yeah, the one that bites for Western to start the season was that loss up at Anchorage, unfortunately.
Yep.
Another team reeling a little bit, had to have them both. They did. Duluth beating Cornell at home, 3-2 and 4-2, made it a little more interesting than they maybe wanted to, though.
Probably.
So Duluth survives that one. Omaha traveling to Long Island University 2-1 on Friday night. They get the win 7-1 on Saturday.
Opened up a little bit. Yeah.
Big victory for them. Big matchup here. CC 8-0 in night number 1 against Air Force, and then traveling to Air Force, losing 6-3 in night number 2. What a swing in those two games. The CC team, this Tiger team, still hard to get a read on them. They are just struggling on the road. It just seems like.
Yeah, and it seems like it's been the Saturday games too. No, it's like they come out good on Fridays, and it seems like either some adjustments are made from their opponents, and it just seems like the offense, again, 8-0 against Air Force. When was the last time we saw Color score 8 goals? It's been at least in one game, I should say. It's been a while.
That's a great question.
That's actually that's one for the maybe for the books. That we'll research that one later, right?
One for the Maxon tally, right?
Right, exactly. But this is where college hockey shows, right? Is when you're playing the same team back to back, you have to know that your opponents are going to be making some adjustments. And it seems like CC, at least on the second half of a series, is having trouble closing it out, but still are competitive games. And I think that's part of, again, the transition under Chris Mayotte, that it's part of those growing pains is, yes, we have good starts, but now how do we carry that and to make some adjustments ourselves to ensure that we can grab both wins out of a weekend series?
Right. Well, only one game was played on Saturday, the Hall of Fame game down at T-Mobile Arena in Vegas, North Dakota, scoring the first 2 of this hockey game. Arizona State storming back with 3 straight to take this victory.
That's awesome.
3-2. Yeah, it is. It was kind of funny. I had some friends. I think the final shots on goal, if I'm not mistaken, let me pull it up here.
Didn't Arizona State have an edge in that?
Like massively.
Yeah.
From what I remember. In fact, I think it was like North Dakota only finished. Why can't I find the score here? There it is. Box score here. Yeah. Shots were 21-15 in favor of ASU. So they did not give North Dakota much space. No. And a couple of guys I was skating with tonight talked about, they're like, I can't believe North Dakota, played like that and blah, blah, whatever. This Arizona State team is going to be good, man.
We talked about this, right? Where Arizona State, especially with some of the transfers, remember they had some good transfers come into their program, and especially with, Shane Doan's kid at the helm. They've got some offense. They've got some offense. I think their big question is actually in that is a Sententhaler. That's their starting goaltender, at least on paper. And just, again, the inconsistencies with them and it being an independent does not help their case either. And I say that because, first, the travel schedule for them is atrocious.
Right.
So that makes it tough. And then to have sort of this very hyped up Hockey Hall of Fame game, which, I mean, granted, Vegas put on a really good show for that. Let's put it that way. Really, really good show.
Yeah.
But and then being able to storm back against North Dakota. Holy buckets. I mean, shall we say that's a statement win for Arizona?
So the question is ASU just that good, or is North Dakota maybe not the powerhouse that we thought, or was it just two good teams going at it, do you think?
I think both can be correct, because remember we talked about how UND, when we did our NCHC preview, right, where there's a lot of top-end talent, but they're very young too. And you kind of wonder if these are the young growing pains, whereas ASU, I think, has a little bit more experience in their lineup. There's still two very good hockey teams, so it's a one-goal game. Right? It's a one-goal game. It's not like this is a blowout. I think if you're North Dakota, the big thing under Brad Berry, he was disappointed, is that you're up by 2. Granted, the Omen, right? It's the worst lead in hockey, but you got to be able to lock things down and close it out. But you got to give credit to Arizona State for sticking with it, for coming back, getting 3 unanswered, and taking on the victory in that very prestigious game there down at T-Mobile Arena.
Right. Yeah, I'm actually looking, for those who are curious what I'm up to right now. I have downloaded the Colorado College, going back to them. I'm trying to find the last time they have scored 8 goals, and I'm still sifting through, hoping that I'm gonna find something here.
Well, the last time St. Cloud did against Miami last year, last February. So there's that.
I'm trying to see here. Their record book is actually extremely confusing to follow, by the way. And it hasn't been updated in a couple of years. But like I said, I mean, they haven't scored 8 goals.
If I had a guess, it'd be probably in the early 2000s.
Yeah, that's what I'm kind of looking at. They actually won in February 27th of 2004. They beat St. Cloud 7-1. Oh, here we go. An 8-2 victory. Who do they play though? It just says home.
What was the date?
They're all against. Oh, I see. They're doing it for each opponent. I see. It's each opponent. They beat St. Cloud 8-2 in 2005.
Okay.
So there's your last one, probably against St. Cloud, I would say. Yep. Yeah, that's the last time they've scored 8 goals against St. Cloud. I'd have to go through each opponent. But we don't
have time for that.
you mean you don't want to do a whole expose on Colorado College hockey? Come on, man.
Not today.
Well, let's do an expose on our team. The last matchup in the NCHC groups here. St. Cloud was at the Sanford Center on Friday night, at home Saturday against Bemidji State, losing 3-1 against the Beavers Friday, 4-1 victory on Saturday. A tale of 2 games, literally.
Yes.
Night number 1. Bemidji State 3-1 victory. Zach Okabe gets the scoring started on the power play in the first period from Jack Peart and Yami Cranla. Bemidji State 2 goals in the second, including a power play marker, and then a power play marker at the tail end of that game with just a few seconds remaining in period number 3. Shots on goal 28-18 in favor of the Beavers. Faceoffs, Huskies were 31 for 50 something, got cut off here. 56.4 percent, I believe it's actually for Bemidji State, if I'm not mistaken. Power plays 1 for 7 for the Huskies, 3 for 5 on the PK, allowing 2 goals on special teams. Jackson Castor, 25 saves on 28 shots. Nick, this game was
ugly.
Yeah. What went wrong here?
I think a lot of things, obviously.
Nailed it.
First, well, right. So, but couple of things. A lot of penalties in this game. So I don't think the flow of the game was helping St. Cloud get to their game. It felt like they were off almost at all 60 minutes. Not great in the faceoff dot, as we saw. And it just seemed like the hockey cliche that the passes were 6 inches off. Right. Gripping the sticks too tight. It just was a night where St. Cloud just wasn't there. And I don't know what it was, because it was very uncharacteristic. And for a lot of the chatter that we saw in conversation that was one of the worst games that they've seen St. Cloud play in maybe a couple of years in terms of just how discombobulated they looked. And I would have to agree with that. They did not look good at all. Yeah.
So I did actually lie. The Huskies were 56.4% on the faceoff dot, though, which is a great sign. 31 for 55, even in that loss. When we talked about the faceoff struggles that St. Cloud has had before, so it's good to see them finally kind of getting back on their high horse and being able to get the job done. Like we mentioned, Jackson Castor. I mean, you can't really fault him.
Giving up 2 shorties. What do you want him to do? Or sorry, when you're giving up 2 power play goals when you're shorthanded. Hello, Nick.
Yeah, certainly. Other night, Saturday night, Dominic Bassi in net, stopping 18 of 19 in this matchup. And this is the thing, Nick, is that Bemidji State actually scored again on the power play, so something to keep an eye on here.
Yep.
One of the things that's been the saving grace, we'll get to it in just a few moments, has been the other side of that, though, for the Huskies, one of the best shorthanded teams in the nation to start the season too. Power play goal to match in period number 2, Vieti Miettinen on special teams from Adam Ingram and Dylan Anhorn. Good to see all three of those guys producing. And Adam Ingram,
oh boy,
on assist in the second period, disgusting.
And dare we say,
fourth center, number 4 in the top 10s yesterday or today, I believe. So,
and how about this? Andreas Athanasiou for the Wild, almost a duplicate goal scored against the Wild tonight too. So holy, just nasty to be able to drag it not only on the toe but between the legs, and then in one motion go backhand roof, and had some velocity on it too. That was a showcase of skill, shall we say, from the freshman.
Yeah, third period, Yami Kranila, a shorthanded marker from Kyler Kupka. Then Zach Okabe, Dylan Anhorn tallying his second point of the night with an assist. Yami Kranila, his second point of the night as well, too, to cap off the scoring shots. 36-19 in favor of St. Cloud that night. 70% in the faceoff circle, 49 for 70 for the Huskies. Fantastic. And we talked about power play 1 for 7 both nights, and then 5 for 6 on the PK tonight with a shorty to boot. And we talked about Dominic Bassi's play. You know, Nick, here's the thing, is that this team has looked much better at home. You can't tell me that big ice sheet doesn't play a factor. You know,
it always has.
You know,
and shall we say that, and it's going to happen sooner than later. I'll tell you this way: that sooner or later, Olympic Sheik's going to be gone. Just because
might actually be later, the way that they're having trouble getting the chillers that would have to be reset in order to do it. But
that's the last I heard, and this is coming from some conversations up at the Herb Brooks National Hockey Center. Sometimes I feel in the women's games is there seems to be a push for funding that may already be somewhat ghostedly secured because they have to replace it.
The issue is that
it's what they're pushing.
Yeah. Well, the issue is also the chillers and the style that the way the chillers run, which are in the four corners, basically right on the outside of the rink. The substance, the liquid that they put in them, the company doesn't make them anymore. So,
and I believe environmentally it's banned, if I recall correctly.
Well, the other issue that they're having too is when they take them out, that building, the way that it sits on the water table that's there is a real nightmare too. So, but nonetheless, I mean, use it while you got it, right? That ice sheet.
Yeah. And, granted, the upgrades to the Herb have been long overdue with the video boards. The sound system still has yet to be desired. To me, it's still very, shall we say, muffled. The volume is there because the speakers are definitely now the right size for that venue. Yeah. But you're putting just a larger speaker in the same tin can. There needs to be some acoustic tuning, we'll put it today. That's in a building that's a concrete walls and then a tin roof.
I mean, you talked about the issues. That's going to be second priority,
of course. Right. And dare I say, going back to the Olympic sheet, at some point it's going to happen. And I've argued before that, yes, it's an advantage to St. Cloud to be on the Olympic sheet. And granted, been reading actually some things on the history of the Herb Brooks National Hockey Center and the big push. And the question I've always wondered, why was it an Olympic sheet to begin with? Here's something interesting you probably didn't know. Part of the policy push at the Minnesota House of Representatives Senate was the expenditures were actually part of Olympic spending. So it's part of a much larger bill. So I forget everything that wasn't, but it wasn't like its own bill that got pushed through. So this wasn't like a St. Cloud State specific funding. It was essentially, shall we say, kind of earmarked to something bigger.
An outside entity, basically.
Essentially, but they got it done. Again, credit to Herb Brooks for actually, making that happen. But at some point, to prepare these athletes for the NHL game, you have to play in the same sheet, in my opinion. I think that has to happen at some point. Now, granted, the arena, as we talked about, may force them to do it sooner than maybe they'd like to, but I've always argued, I think at some point you just have to do it.
Yeah. And don't forget, for those who are curious, by the way, there is a practice sheet on the other side. So when they do travel to places like Bemidji and most other arenas, they do practice on that sheet to make sure they are prepared for that less time and space for the normal sheet as well. You know who else would have them prepared? His last game after 28 years with the team, Jeremiah Minkle, taking a new job, wants to be closer to his kids, wishing him the best of luck. I mean, we've seen Minks down at the rink plenty of times. He's even given me some help with my equipment, actually, when I was in St. Cloud too. Just a great guy. Of course, his family was roaming around there too. I mean, it's just like, it's just a fantastic guy.
You know, it's the stories that, like Jeremiah Minkle, right, where the casual fan sees him as the equipment manager. They see him as he's the guy that's helping to sharpen skates and getting jerseys and gear ready, right? There's so much more, and the Rink Live, I believe, was McHatton did a wonderful expose on Minkle. So if you do, shameless plug, if you do actually have an opportunity to read that, check that out. But you talk about just sort of the emotional support. He was kind of a father figure to a lot of these young freshmen and these guys coming in, right? Where, you drop your skates off and there would be conversations. And I think McHatton did mention that, I think it was actually Jack Peart, specifically, that he would see him before they would go to rink of practice. Peart and Minkle were having a cup of coffee and chatting with Minkle last year a couple different times, even one for a television interview. You just got the sense that he just has that family, just moral value system to him. He just has that just sort of fatherly figure, I should say. And again, to the big reason why, again, is his kids, I think only 6 months old, but made him realize, hey, I love this job, but I really would, if I have the opportunity to
have
weekends and be there for my kid as he or she gets older, I need to take that. And it's an out of hockey job. I believe it's something to do with like electricity.
Yeah,
I don't know the exact thing, but it's a non-hockey related job. All I can say, and I think all Huskies fans can relate to this, Noah, is gotta tip your cap to Jeremiah for the work that he's done both on and off the ice. All the advice he's given to the players, the support he's been giving. He really was a presence in that locker room or on the hallway. He'll be deeply, deeply missed in that organization. And you just cannot put a price tag on a human being like Jeremiah. You just can't.
Yeah, you certainly can't. And in fact, I want to see if I can, of course, you caught me on the spot here that I don't have the article up. I just had it up and I just closed it when you said it, unfortunately. But with that being said, wishing Jeremiah the best luck. Obviously, he was very cordial to us every time we saw him down there. NCHC does keep clicking along with or without Jeremiah, though. So we do pay attention to what's coming up here. We technically have standings for the NCHC.
Technically.
Denver is in first, 2-0, 6 points on the season. Miami is technically in second, 0-2, but they're the only two teams who have played. Best of the rest, if you're going by non-conference rankings, St. Cloud would be third at 7-1. Western Michigan and Omaha both at 4-3. North Dakota at 3-3. Duluth at 4-4, and then CC is at 3-4. So
3-4. Sorry, 3-4-1.
Yeah. So
okay.
So that's your best of the rest. What's on tap in the NCHC? Minnesota Duluth will travel to Colorado College first. Action for the Tigers. Maybe could catch Duluth sleeping a little bit here. They've been good at home.
They have been.
Certainly could see if Ed Robeson can give them a little bit of magic. They won their game 8-0 on Friday. Don't think that they don't have it in them. They just got to find consistency for this crew. Miami will travel a little bit closer to home to Western Michigan.
It'll be a tough battle.
Keep an eye on that one. North Dakota travels to Omaha Baxter Arena for their first matchup of the season. St. Cloud is headed to visit the defending national champion Denver Pioneers for their first NCHC test. What a test it will be.
Yes, it will be.
You say oof. They're a good team. Don't get me wrong, but this Denver team doesn't scare me like they did last year. They've had some bumps in the road to start the season. Huskies still going to have to be on their A game. I think they haven't won at Magnus Arena since like 2014. So I believe it's probably one of the longest standing arena droughts for any NCHC team. For sure, it is in St. Cloud's history by a mile. The next closest is, I think, Kalamazoo. Or it was until last year, at least. But St. Cloud, Denver, what do you anticipate?
Oof. And it's not the team I say, Wolf, it's what you mentioned, the history at Magnus, right? There are just some arenas that you go to, you're like, crap.
And St. Cloud has had some healthy leads in that building during that time too that they've blown. Yeah,
that arena has been, in the Halloween, they've been, ghosts and goblins to that freaking squad. Denver's still a great team. They're really good when they play with a lead. Again, in Magnus, they just seem to have our number. Now for St. Cloud, despite the very, shall we say, not great performance in Friday. They rebounded, got back to the game on Saturday at home against Bemidji. But can you carry that sort of same momentum, and can you mentally be prepared for a road game and actually go out there and execute? I think I think for St. they just have to have a really good start of this game. Yeah. It seems to be that on the road, St. Cloud in its history have had some slow starts on the road that hurt them. And Denver is not going to be a team you want to give any sort of slack to. When you give them an inch, they take a mile. And again, they're very, very comfortable at home for St. Cloud. Again, going into conference play, they're taking a pretty darn good record into non-conference, into NCHC play now. You got to have these conference points because stranger things has happened. Look how crazy it's been so far, right, Noah?
Yeah.
Duluth has had a god-awful, shall we say, non-conference, but they may go run the table in the NCHC because let's not forget, they didn't allow a single goal and won the NCHC Frozen Faceoff last year.
Yeah, well,
so stranger things have happened.
Yeah, it gives me hope that this St. Cloud team started 7-1, though. I mean, besides the little blip against Bemidji State, we talked about it in NCAA. They were bound to have a terrible game at some point.
Yep.
You know what? It's a bump in the road. Only make it that. They responded very well the next night. Gives me a lot of confidence. Moving over to the pairwise, there are only 2 teams in the country that are undefeated. Nick, do you know who they are? Without cheating, you little cheater.
I'm not cheating.
I heard you click your
pairwise.
Yeah, you're gonna see it. They're both right there.
I'll tell you this. It was not the 2 teams I would have guessed.
Yeah.
I was going to guess Michigan, and I was going to guess no, seriously, and Connecticut.
Yeah, Harvard is technically number 1 in the pairwise. Okay, but just hold on. They're 2-0, and Penn State is in 3rd at 8-0. The St. Cloud State Huskies are 2nd in the pairwise right now. Whatever you want to take that with a grain of salt. 7-1, as are the Michigan Wolverines, who have lost 1 game. But let's run you through the top 16. We're going to do that every week, and we'll talk about teams otherwise as we see fit. Of course, take this, like we said, with a grain of salt because we are very early here, but first couple of rankings. So here we go. Harvard, number 1, St. Cloud, Penn State, Massachusetts, and Denver in the top 5. 6-10, Michigan, UConn. I mean, great start to the season for them.
Yep.
BU, Ohio State is 9th. UMass Lowell is 10, Providence 11, Michigan Tech 12, Sacred Heart.
How about 13. That,
huh? Bemidji State jumps up to 14, guessing for sure with that victory against St. Cloud. Miami is 15, and Quinnipiac is 16. You're saying, where are the Gophers? Well, they're in 17th. Other NCHC teams of note, Western Michigan is 20 right now. Omaha is 30, and North Dakota is 31. Duluth is 35.
CC's 47.
Yeah, 47, and we're missing... Or is that it?
We're missing Omaha?
No, Omaha was like 13, I think. Maybe that was everybody. Where's Denver? Denver would be.
Denver's 5.
Yeah, there we go. Anyway, but yeah, no real surprises here because it's way too early to tell. AIC, Notre Dame, and Western rounding out the top 20. ASU at 22, as is Minnesota State, tied in that same spot. I expect both of them to probably jump as the season goes on. So yeah, those are your first preliminary rankings. Not really a whole lot to say on them just because I am a little surprised maybe that Wisconsin is still down at 43. I mean, I know they're 2-6, but I figured that victory against Duluth might help them a little bit more.
I'll tell you what, Duluth is 30, 35. That's a tough place to start. I'll put it to you that way.
Yeah. So definitely we'll keep an eye on it. It will develop by the time we get to Christmas. It's going to be very, very interesting. Over to WCHA women's action. Minnesota State Mankato traveled to Bemidji State this past weekend. 2-1 victory for Bemidji State. and then a 3-0 victory for Mankato. Those two teams kind of going back and forth, beating up on each other. This Bemidji State team has given a couple of big dogs fits this season. Wisconsin traveled to Duluth, a 2-1 victory in overtime for the Bulldogs, finally knocking a victory against the Badgers. And then Wisconsin winning in night number 2 by a score of 4-3. Now, if you're a Huskies fan, you say, that's fantastic. Shows that we can hang with a team like Wisconsin. Well, what's not fantastic is that victory keeps Duluth ahead of the Huskies in the standings. So kind of a double-edged sword there. Minnesota traveling to Ohio State, and this was an absolute weekend. 4-2 victory in night number 1 for the Gophers in Ohio, and then a 4-4 tie that Ohio State won in the shootout on home ice. So, a lot of chaos, even women's hockey here. St. Cloud at and versus St. Thomas last weekend. They got them both. 4-1 victory in night number 1, 4-0 in night number 2 for an 8-1 total combined score against the Tommies last weekend, who are dead last in the WCHA. We'll get to that in a second. Night number 1, Clara Hamlerova didn't get the scoring started until an unassisted tally in the second period. Yanina Newland from Allie Cornelius and Clara Hamlerova again from Newland and Bailey Burton, all those goals coming in period number 2. And then Avery Myers from Yanina Newland also in the second period. So all 4 goals for the Huskies in the middle frame. And then Bemidji State tacking one on in period number 3. Shots on goal 31-14 for the Huskies. Faceoffs 45.6%, 26 for 57. A fair improvement in night number 1, but still you got to get above 50%. Even when you're playing the last place team in the WCHA. 0 for 3 on the power play, 5 for 5, perfect on the PK.
PK's been rock solid this year.
Yeah, Sonia Hola, 13 saves on 14 shots. Anything surprise you about that one, or do you want to move on to night number 2?
Not surprising, really, if anything.
All right. Well, night number 2, even better. 4-0 shutout for JoJo Chobak, 20 saves, 20 shots. I was going to ask you this question, but of course, it accidentally got clipped into the men's side. So first WCHA shutout for her was last season, came for Duluth. It was a 1-0 victory on 27 saves versus Ohio State. So it kind of shows you what a great pickup she has been, a 1-2 tandem between her and Sonia Hola for this Huskies team. Nina Newland from Olivia Savar got our scoring started in period number 1. Clara Hamlerova, a great weekend for her. Bailey Burton as well, a couple of assists on the weekend. And Dale Ross for that tally in period number 2. Emma Gentry, a pair of goals in period 2 and period 3, both of them from Addie Scribner, Allison Green, and Courtney Hall, the secondary assists on those last 2 goals. Shots 26-20, a bit tighter in the shot category for night number 2 for St. Cloud. Faceoffs 20 for 49 for a 40.8% clip. No power plays for the Huskies in night number 2, but perfect 3 for 3 on the PK. Nick, they had to have them both. They got them both.
And again, you see the progression with Idalski, especially on the PK. That's been his trademark, is the defensive area of the game. We've seen it not only in person, calling the games, the structure's much better. They're playing much better as a unit, all 5 skaters on the ice. And this is, you can say, kind of a measuring stick, because this is a team that on paper you are skillfully better at, and you took care of business, which tells us, because we thought, okay, if this was going to be a successful season, they should be competing for that the 4th, 5th spot. And at least it's still early, but all indications there you were close in the big gauntlet, the big 3, Minnesota, Ohio State, Wisconsin. You lose all 6 games, but you're still beating at least the one team for now. They're going to get another shot this weekend. You're getting the points where you should be getting them to.
Yeah, probably could have stolen against the Badgers. Unfortunately, weren't able to do that, but did get a point out of that game. So that's great to see. WCHA rankings, for those who are curious, Ohio State finally losing a couple of games. So 8-1-1 in the season, 25 points for them in that top spot. One of the best teams in the country, obviously. Minnesota Golden Gophers on a tear as of late, 7-0-1, 22 points for them. Wisconsin 7-1-0, 1 point back, 21. Rounding out the home squads in the top 4, Mankato is up there right now at 3-7. They've got 10 points on the season because of the way their victories have been earned. Duluth is in the 5 spot that the Huskies so desperately covet, 3-3 in the season, 8 points. St. Cloud 1 point behind them in 6th, 7 points for them, 2-6. Good weekend for them, plus that extra bonus point against the Badgers. Bemidji 1-7 on the season, and St. Thomas 0-6. Bemidji has 3 points with that lone victory they have this season. So again, this WCHA women's hockey section is going to get more and more interesting, especially if Mankato, Duluth, St. Cloud, Bemidji, and St. Thomas beat up on each other. And really, I think Bemidji, gave one of the top teams fits. Mankato has the ability to. Duluth obviously showed that last weekend. St. Cloud almost stole one against Wisconsin. And obviously,
almost to Minnesota.
Yeah,
too.
I would say hung into that game too. This is going to be an interesting year for women's hockey, and I'm super excited for it. What's on tap this week? We've got a weird week the next couple of weeks, actually, for women's hockey. So hang in there. Sacred Heart non-conference game traveling to Mankato. Wisconsin is off this weekend. As far as conference games, Ohio State travels Saturday, Sunday to St. Thomas. Duluth will travel to Minnesota Friday, Saturday. Why do I mention Friday, Saturday? Well, it'll come back into play in just a few moments, I promise. St. Cloud will travel to Bemidji State those same times, Friday, Saturday. And then Monday, November 7th, 7 p.m., Andover Community Center, the Women's Hockey Hall of Fame game. St. Cloud will travel to face Minnesota in Andover. So Huskies have 3 games in 4 days, one of which the team that they just saw last weekend, the Golden Gophers. Nick, I would say success for the weekend would certainly be taking 2 out of 3 in any fashion. I would say you got to get at least 6 points out of 9 this weekend to feel like you had a good weekend. I think we're kind of pointing towards Bemidji State as the team to beat. BSU has had an up and down season that can give teams fits, as we've seen to start the year. The better question is, well, 1, what do you expect from that matchup? But number 2, can this women's team, can they get it done against Minnesota on a big stage game?
They can, because they darn near did it at Ritter. In that home and home. It was a 1-goal game, and it was late. I thought it was going to OT, and then
like 3 minutes left.
3 minutes or 2 minutes left. Decided to get one pass. It was kind of a really bad bounce too, off the end wall. Yep. And then shall I say, just a rebound that went right to a stick. And credit the Minnesota player. He went to the right area of the ice. He stop on pucks, as you would say, and got that one bang in the back of the net. So that was kind of a heartbreaker. So the key here is how much gas does St. Cloud have in the tank against Minnesota? That's my concern. I think it's going to be tough against Bemidji State, and both St. Cloud have been giving those upper echelon teams, making them earn their wins. So this is going to be a tooth and nail type matchup between the Beavers and the Huskies. The big question I have is, Minnesota, we know how Minnesota can skate. They skate laps around their opponents. And for St. Cloud, depending on how much energy they exude against the Beavers, how much can they continue to try to siphon out of their proverbial gas tanks to try to give Minnesota a run for their money. That again, you got to earn every win, right? I know Minnesota on paper is the more skilled team. Everybody knows that, but they've made Minnesota earn those 2 games in that home and home series, and they're going to have to earn one. But again, both teams playing 3 games in 4 nights. If you're going to catch Minnesota possibly off guard, this is the one game to do it.
Yeah, for those who are curious, by the way, it was last weekend where the victory did come from Bemidji State, that 2-1 victory against the Mavericks. Like we talked about, that was their first win of the season. So again, very doable Friday and Saturday. I think you want to get both of those, kind of get that off your back a little bit, and then see what happens on Monday. Minnesota, on paper, Gophers, better hockey team. But like you mentioned with Brian Adalski and what he brings to this table, I think there could be maybe an early Thanksgiving feast for the Huskies if they're able to be successful down there. And they belong at that dinner table. Let's just put it that way.
Yes,
and the past couple of years, they in some senses shouldn't have even been in the same house, unfortunately. Right. So a very big steps for Idalski, as you like to refer him to. It makes me think of Ichiro.
That is from what I understand, that's the correct pronunciation is Idalski.
No, it's just I like how you never say his first name.
Oh,
that's what I was saying. Like Ichiro. But with that being said, let's move over to the professional world. We're moving from baseball to the Minnesota Wild. 4-4-1 now, 9 points on the season, 1 point out of third in the Central, and 1 point out of second in the wild card spot. -4 goal differential. They did get a victory tonight in the shootout, 4-3. Beating Montreal on Tuesday by a score of 3-1, beating Ottawa on Thursday 4-2, and then losing to Detroit last night by a score of 2-1. Good to see Michael Huff take that puck off the face and be no worse for wear. mostly
right
for Detroit. That was kind of crazy. Ryan Hartman did exit the game today after his fight, and then Marcus Foligno was out to start the game tonight. But good to see Mason Shaw get his first today as well too. His first NHL goal. So as far as the standings are concerned, like we mentioned, the Wild eking up there. I actually think the Pacific might be stronger than the Central this year, and it's been a while since we've said that. So
very long while.
Yeah, important to maybe kind of keep an eye on that and make sure that we are cruising along. If you're a Minnesota Wild fan, what's on tap for them? Montreal this Tuesday and Seattle this Thursday, and then they don't play until I believe the next following Monday or Tuesday. So
sounds right.
A bit of a slower week for Minnesota Wild fans. Yeah, actually, Minnesota and the Colorado Avalanche are actually tied in record right now. Colorado has the tiebreaker, of course, with goal differential. But Nick, this team, we've talked about it so often on this show. You know, you want to hit the panic button, but it might have been a little bit too early. Now, am I saying
way too early?
Yeah, am I saying Marc-Andre Fleury is set in stone? I mean, he's been playing really well. Philip Gustafsson has looked good too, I think. You know, still too early to tell on the other side of that too, to say that they're going to be rock solid for 82 games.
Right.
But much better direction than we've seen in the first couple of games.
You know, and it's interesting when you watch a hockey team, especially early, and the personnel is not much different. And you see how the execution just wasn't there. It seemed like they were given the playbook to the new season like yesterday.
Right.
It just kind of felt that way, especially in the defensive zone. And I think when you and I broke it down, we both saw the same thing, and that is there were some especially defensive mistakes that were uncharacteristic. And then that dominoes into goaltending, and that dominoes into, well, what about the offensive forwards? Well, the goals were there. Right. They just were giving up more than they were putting in, right?
Which is a great way to lose a hockey game.
Yeah. So I didn't push the panic button just yet. There was certainly cause for concern because you can't get into these marathon or sprints to 7 goals every single game. But it wasn't that every single facet of the game was off it, and you could see that it was okay. There's a commitment issue. There is going back to what got you successful, and they've got it back in tune again. And again, one domino leads to another, right? So defensive structure has been much better, which has allowed Fleury to settle in. Gustafsson against Detroit, again, looked solid in his backup role. So it seems like this team is starting to find its way again. Now, always the proverbial nail in the flat tire is when you have injuries start to pile up, right? So your Marcus Foligno was out, as you mentioned, to start the game.
Ryan
Hartman left in the middle of the second period. We looked to be after a really short tussle. And it almost seemed like he did it when he fell.
Yeah.
I don't know. It was kind of a weird
Matt Dumba PTSD.
Something like that. But so you've got a lot of sandpaper out of your lineup, but Mason Shaw got his first NHL goal. Matt Boldy continues to look like
he's pretty good at hockey, huh?
His puck protection is he getting lessons from Kaprizov? Because holy hell, is he good in tight spaces? He might be. He's technically a rookie, right? Still, he's technically a rookie. He might be. I think he is.
Really?
I think so. He might be a Calder guy. I think he might.
Well, geez, how many he played? He played quite a bit of hockey last year.
43 games, I think, or 45.
What do you have to hit to be a rookie? I don't even remember.
Or to me not considered?
Yeah.
That's a great question. I don't know that off the top of my head. But this was, and I think the bigger question here is who was going to help? Now, granted, it's not going to fall on one player. How are they going to replace Kevin Fiala? Matt Boldy's making a strong case that says, don't worry, I got it.
So to be considered a rookie, a player must not have played in more than 25 NHL games in any preceding seasons. So I feel like Matt Boldy has definitely eclipsed that last year. Let's see. Matt Boldy. NHL.
Well, he definitely played more than 25. There's no question about that.
Yeah, he's played 55 career games. So, yeah, I don't think he is a rookie. But certainly a fantastic season for him to start, because the conversation was if he would have played all last year, he probably would have won,
He would have been in consideration.
Yeah, with how good he was. Certainly a great fantasy pickup for those playing that game, by the way. But this Minnesota Wild team, they see Montreal again, a team that they beat last week. The only 2 games these 2 clubs will have this season.
Mm-hmm.
And then Seattle for the first time. The question is, will Shane Wright be in the lineup? Probably not. The mismanagement there has been concerning, to say the least.
I don't know. I'm not on board with that. I'm not.
You don't think that it's concerning? You can't play, dude. I
don't think it's all a mismanagement. I know us from what
you just put the number 4 overall pick in the press box the last 3 games, and you've been playing him an average of 6 minutes a night in the 5 games he has played. That's brutal.
So
send him down. Send him to London. Send him back, or Kingston, wherever he's. Yeah, send him back.
Is it my turn now? Oh, yeah, okay, cool.
I'm just saying.
So I don't give a damn if you're the number 1 overall pick or you're the 156th overall pick. You're right that the mismanagement has been there on the fact that he has not been getting minutes. I don't think he's deserved more minutes, and I think
so. Send him down.
What I'm trying to say is but here's the coin flip, right? Is his talent a waste in the AHL? This is almost to me the curious case of a Jonathan Duran 2.0.
Yeah, you mean the O? They'd send him back to the O.
That too. Either way.
Yeah. But like it doesn't matter how good he needs to play games.
That's what I'm saying. But if he needs to play games, he's not going to get into in my case development in the OHL. He's not.
Okay, but he's not playing at all. What is he? A black ace for the entire year?
No, but
yeah,
I think there are some off-ice issues that are contributing to what's being handled on the ice. Now, mind you, where I think you have some credence here is there's some mutually exclusive things that have to be figured out there, which is, okay, if there are some off-ice issues, address them so that way.
Send them down.
Okay, but again, I don't think he needs to be. I'm not in favor of setting him down. I'm not.
Okay, then play him more. You have to play him.
Okay.
Yeah.
But also, if there are off-ice issues and you're with a Dave Hackstall led, because he's similar to Torts in that sense, I don't see that happening overnight.
Okay, well, let's put it to you this way. Okay, 4th line for the Minnesota Wild. It's been a combination of people, but Mason Shaw's line tonight, right? Sure. Guys like Brandon Duhaime, things like that. If we went in and we're like, Mason Shaw, Brandon Duhaime, and throw another name in there. They played 625 tonight.
Sure.
Like, you don't want your 4th line playing 625. Like, they should be pushing 8-9 minutes a night at least, maybe even 10. Like,
right.
That's the thing is, like, Wright is not a 4th line guy, or he's not projected to be, shouldn't be. They've not tried him at all up in that top 6 at all.
I don't think they have wanted to,
and hardly in the top. But why? How do you know? Here's the thing. It's like, think of my prime example is this guy who spent the majority of the year in the AHL, and then 3 months later was a Stanley Cup champion, Jake Gensel. Jake Gensel, to me, fantastic hockey player, right? Jake Gensel would have never been the player he was if he hadn't come up in his call-up with like 8 games remaining in the regular season, and he got put on. But he got put on what line? Sidney Crosby's line. And he found instant chemistry, Crosby or otherwise, which could be a little bit of luck.
It's a lot of luck. Let's be honest.
Doesn't say Jake Gensel is a skill, but that's what I'm saying. Jake Gensel caught fire. When's Jake Gensel ever been back down in the AHL again? Because he earned that trust in the regular season. They stuck with it for the playoffs. He became a playoff stud. And then he's always been a top 6 guy in that lineup. And that's where I'm saying, not saying Shane Wright when you put him up there on that top line, and Seattle obviously isn't an oh my God amazing team. I mean, Matty Beniers is probably a top 5 guy on that team, and he just got there, right? But like, with that being said, you don't know until you try it. And it's like, if you feel like he's struggling that much on the 4th line in sheltered minutes, maybe he's not in the right spot. It's the same conversation we've been having with Marco Rossi. Maybe you put Marco Rossi in the top 9, top 6, see how he performs a little bit there. Maybe he just needs a different look.
So let me get this straight, because I'm about to blow your argument out of the water.
Okay, well, let's hear it.
Jake Gensel. Now, granted, I don't know for a fact what's happening behind the closed doors with the Seattle Kraken. I don't know. What I can tell you is there was a lot of chatter about some, shall we say, immaturity to his persona. A big reason why he dropped to 4.
Okay.
And my argument is Jake Gensel put in the work. AHL is different than the O. Let's put that out straight. So I'm not with you on that one at all. I also feel like Jake Gensel deserved the top line minutes. I feel like he's the guy that's always been the work ethic and putting in the time and to develop chemistry.
Right, but he got that opportunity. He got that opportunity because he got called up in the A, and that's where the void was, though. You can't just say Jake Gensel went from being a top line AHL guy to a top line NHL player. He lucked into that spot and kept it, obviously.
So before you cut me out,
get over it. Get over it.
Okay, here's the thing though. Here's what you're missing is, I don't think I'm gonna pause that because this is okay. We'll say it this way. It is simply not a hockey reason he's stuck on the 4th line. There's no way.
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing with you, but he also shouldn't be playing. He shouldn't be playing, not on that particular point, but he shouldn't be playing 6 minutes a night. Either give him a chance in the top 6, see what he can do, or if you feel like there's some issues, he doesn't need to be with an NHL franchise. Send him down, get him a psychologist, get him whatever he needs to make himself right. Let him have a productive season in the O. Maybe call him up for a playoff push. Do you
really think his game benefits in the OHL though?
I know for a darn fact that it doesn't benefit at all with him sitting in the press box for game after game after game.
I understand, but you're robbing Peter to pay Paul is what I'm trying to say. Is I don't think either of those are going to help him build his game. I get one is a little bit less crazy than the other. I'm with you on that. I'd rather have him play, but I don't think sending him back to the OHL is healthy for his development.
Well, then where do you want to put him?
Again, I think that there is more to the story than just where his name is in the lineup chart. I think that's why I'm very confident that's why he is where he is. It's not.
So he's immature. So he's in the press box. But again, then what? Like, are you going to burn his ELC, or are you just going to not burn it but let him sit in the press box? Or are you going to let the man play hockey?
Okay. So with a player like that, there has to be a plan in place, right? I don't know. I think it's really called mismanagement. That's what I'm trying to say is I don't know if they even know, because again, he just got to the organization. He's a young kid, right? He's 18, 19 years old. So the question is, what do they know and how are they trying to address how they can get him to, shall we say, words are terrible with my brain today.
Well,
maximize what his potential is, which we all know is high.
Yeah, do you think him being a black ace all year does that? Like maturity issues.
I've never talked about full season. I'm talking about at this current moment right now. You're 20 yards ahead of the play.
Okay, but at some point they've got to make a decision on this kid. He only has 4 more games to play before they have to do something with him.
I'll put it this way. I would put a lot of money down, including a dinner tab. Thank you, Caleb JP Body, that he does not move. I don't think
so. He stays in the show, even if he's on the 4th line. You need to play him. He needs to play.
No kidding, he needs to play. But your argument is that even if he is playing on the 4th line, that's not where he should be. And I'm with you on that. His game is not a 4th line type. At least that's what we think he is. With the skill set and everything that is shown, how many times have we seen top picks? And granted, these could be scouting things that they end up being sort of a grind. Look at Ryan Hartman. That's almost a perfect example. He was quite the shooter in his, so I'm just saying, let it play out a little bit. I'm just saying.
I don't disagree, but to let it play out, you got to let the kid play 8 or 9, 10 minutes a night, not 5.
Okay, but that's if you're going to call it 3 minutes a night of mismanagement. So we're talking 6 shifts, 5 or 6 shifts a night that he's missing. If you're going to count 30 to 45 seconds, of
3 minutes to 10 is a huge jump. That's like probably 8 or 9 shifts at least.
I thought you said 5 minutes to 8.
You just said 3, so I was going off of what.
No, it was 30-second shifts, 30 to 45-second shifts.
But that's what I'm saying though. You look at the average time on ice for a fourth line for most NHL franchises, and they're pushing 8.5, 9 minutes. So my point is, he's better than some of the guys that are in the fourth line right now in this lineup,
there's no
especially
question,
in Seattle.
right.
But at the same time, like, you can't keep sheltering him, because he's not going to learn the NHL game if you keep sheltering him at 5:15 every night. You know what I'm saying? Like, you got to let the horse run a little bit. And Seattle, hate to break it to you, the Kraken are not winning a cup this year. So let it, if you're going to say, like, your philosophy, I'm with you on that. Let it play out. If you're Dave Haxtell, let it play out. Or maybe you put him with Jaden Schwartz for a night and say,
and maybe that's sort of a mission statement that is, sort of like, shall we say, the Bill of Guerin. They have to earn it. And maybe in their eyes, they want those top 6 guys to earn it. Maybe is that simple. And again, from a pure hockey analysis, you're not wrong. I have not disagreed with you on that. I'm simply trying to explain why he is where he is right now, at least from my own compilation of thoughts and ideas.
But,
and again,
but like you mentioned, you said it feels like they don't really have a plan in place. And what we're talking about is a plan. And it's like, he's only got 4 games left to burn. So they got to decide, is he staying?
Take that clock out. He's staying. To me, you can't, Shane Wright, to me, does not benefit from his skill set he's already shown to go back to the Ontario Hockey League and tear it up there. To me, he doesn't learn anything from that.
Obviously, like Marco Rossi, different story, right? Send him back down to the A, for example, right?
I think there is a valid argument for Marco Rossi to go to the AHL, yes.
Right, but if I said, yeah, they're not going to send him down to the A, but they're going to play Marco Rossi for 5.5 minutes a night and then scratch him every other night, what would you say to that? You would say send him down, right?
So we're talking 2 different players with 2 different backgrounds. Marco Rossi has a history of being a leader off the ice, a history of being an absolute workhorse and earning his spot, where again the big question mark with Shane Wright is there seems to be some immaturity issues, which I think are hampering some of the decisions and clouding which should be an easier transition to a guy that has top 6 skill, that has a lot of the makings to be a good offensive player in the National Hockey League. And that is what's clouding, I think, everything they wanted to do with them. Again, 3 teams passed on him.
Is there an argument to be said that if you send him down to the O, he gains confidence on the ice, continues to do what he does, because he'd tear it up, obviously. And then because the on-ice stuff would not be a distraction, not worried about, making it in the show, making sure every shift is perfect in the NHL, which, let's be real, that's what it's like to be an NHLer. It's very stressful. Right? Could you make the argument to say it might be better for him to go back to the O and maybe connect with people that are going to help with him on the maturity side of thing, and then the hockey side isn't so much of a burden like it is at the NHL level?
100% no. And here's why I say that. It's like you turning your console, like your favorite video game, from veteran mode to easy mode. Yes, you're going to get confidence, but you're not learning the NHL game. You want to be an NHL player, you need to play with NHL people. Going to your point, you need more ice time, right? But the thing is, and this is where, the organization has to figure out what they need to do to crack his immaturity, and that is he's got to stay up. He has the talent. He's got to learn the timing of the NHL game to get any sort of progress in his game. He's not going to get that on the Ontario Hockey League. He's just not going to get that. To me, that's a false sense of confidence. That's not learning and growing your game that way. And to me, the organization themselves, you would think at the NHL level, and we both know that there's plenty of resources there, not only from the team itself, but from the league, the NHL Players Association, right? There's plenty of tools and avenues and support staff. And shall we say, if we're forgetting, sometimes it just takes a team captain, takes someone under their wing and to try to show them the right way, how to be a true pro, how to go to practice, right? You need to have that leadership. And maybe because Seattle is that expansion team, they maybe don't have that guy. Or shall we say, can we just put all the blame on Shane Wright, where he just feels like he's the next Connor McDavid? He hasn't proven a damn thing in the NHL. He walks like his shit don't stink, pardon my French. I haven't gone on a rant here, but maybe that's what it is. And they're just kind of letting it play out and saying, hey, okay, you're going to walk and talk that way and you haven't proven a thing. You're going to stay on the 4th line until you prove us otherwise. Maybe it's that simple of an approach. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. But nonetheless, what I do know, we have one more topic to get to very quickly here on the Huskies Warming House podcast, and we won't keep you waiting. Extra Ice session coming your way now. And welcome into the Extra Ice session. Nick Maxon alongside myself, Noah Grant, episode number 135, our Halloween special. We are spooking each other out here, so let's talk about what are you shaking your head about over here?
It's like my natural reaction to everything.
Wow. Okay. Well, how about this? Are you shaking our head at Mullet Arena, apparently? Because it was an interesting ride. First couple of home games, obviously they're finishing that extension, so the locker rooms will look a little bit better moving forward. But first couple of games, overtime loss against the Jets, and Coyotes' first game in a college hockey rink.
You know, can I? I'm going to say the quiet part out loud, and I don't really care. I think this is getting a lot more attention than it really deserves, to be honest with you. I really do. And here's why. The NHL / the Arizona Coyotes / Arizona State, I hate to drag them into this because essentially they volunteered to help effectively. And God forbid, where would the Coyotes be if Arizona State didn't have this building right now? That's why I'm dragging them into this, right? It's cool to see that there seems to be, now granted, I know there's some diehard Arizona Coyotes fans out there, and I'm glad that they're out there. It just seems like the divorce from Glendale has been the best thing for this organization. It really has.
Yeah.
Granted, the images, I'm sure we'll get to the visiting locker rooms and those kind of things. Those are temporary things. We all know that's not going to be every single week. It's going to get finished, as we mentioned. But the bigger question still remains, Noah, and that is, what does the permanent future for the Coyotes have? And the answer apparently is coming soon here at the end of November. And from what we know, or from what we think we know, is that the City Council Board of Tempe is going to refer the decision to the voters. So they're going to pass the buck and have the residents vote on approving the referendum. So
video is online on YouTube for what the arena would look like, by the way.
And mind you, it's not just an arena, it's a whole big district. There's shopping, I think lodging, a whole bunch of things, restaurants, which I think would be great. But again, the site itself needs environmental cleanup. It would take 4 to 5 years from the first shovel being put down to, actually hosting an NHL game. So the bigger question is this the honeymoon period, or is this true Arizona Coyotes fandom and not just trying to see something that we may never see again in the NHL, which is a team playing in a college hockey rink for at least for what we know now, a full season, which could be multiple to come if the arena does get passed.
Honestly, I thought this last week, I can't remember when they played the first game. If it was Friday or Saturday, I can't remember. Thursday, I can't remember. But regardless, I thought it was the most encouraging storyline we've had to the Arizona Coyotes saga in maybe over a year, because the crowd was fantastic.
Yeah.
Full house. And I've seen a lot of Coyotes fans talking about the excitement if Tempe gets approved. And I feel like we are at a point where, if for a full season, we can see that type of energy at Mullet Arena, right? Really, it kind of comes down to the fact, yes, the Coyotes got to put a good product on the ice. There's no secret about that. But,
you want to talk about mismanagement.
Yeah. Well, if you're Tempe and you say yes to this project, you vote and you say yes, you better be darn sure that if you live somewhere near the Tempe municipality, you better be going to Coyotes games if this thing gets approved, because you are all in as a fan base here now, because you have become the laughingstock of the National Hockey League. You're playing in a I was going to say a rinky-dink arena, but it's actually a beautiful facility, and especially once that extension gets done, it's going to be very nice.
They're making do. I mean, granted, it's not their building. I mean, people again, we'll talk just very briefly about those visiting arenas. They're making do in an arena that isn't there.
Yeah,
let's put it that way.
And it's for a handful of games. Heck, Shane Wright could even survive that one.
Maybe.
But beyond that,
that might be like playing in the OHL for him. So maybe you should play in that.
Yeah, I who's to say? Not us. But that's the thing, is like, the crowd was great. It's a great college hockey barn,
It's one of the best out there, honestly.
And if you're Arizona State fans or Coyotes fans, you should be packing that building for ASU games too, because one, the Sun Devils are really good, and number two, show your hockey fandom. That is the type of thing that really, yes, the Coyotes have been terrible. Yes, they mismanaged their assets. Yes, they're kind of a shitty organization. But we're at this point, and the one crux of this that, for better or for worse, needs to happen, that the Coyotes have zero control over, or mostly zero control over, is fan engagement. And if you're a Coyotes fan and you want Arizona to stay in the state of Arizona, it's put up or shut up time, because this organization is in an absolute hell. What do you mean? Who's voting on this? The Tempe City Council is voting, or not? The Tempe residents are voting on this.
Well, we don't know yet.
Yeah.
We don't know yet. That's the thing. What I'm saying is, no, they do control fan engagement, because if you run the organization correctly, actually spend money not just to the cap floor every year and put a decent product, I think they would have better. But again, the biggest wallop to that organization, and what really started their downfall, was moving out of Phoenix.
Yeah.
To move to Glendale, and granted, hindsight's 2020, we all get that, was the worst thing that they could have done. The commute to there was it was in traffic. I mean, you heard the horror stories in Tempe. If this goes through somehow and actually gets approved, it's near the airport, it's centrally located. But I think the other thing we're missing here, Noah, is hockey is growing in a non-traditional market. And regardless of what happens to the Coyotes, let's just say it gets passed. Great. And actually, there's a part of me that hopes that they do, because I don't want to hear Canadians say, come to Quebec City more. That's driving me more nuts.
Yeah.
Let's put it that way.
There aren't many cities in North America that are ready to truly handle a National Hockey League team.
Well, and the other side of it, that the NHL wants to go to either.
Right.
Let's put it to you that way. The next one right now on the list is Houston.
Yeah,
100%. The other side of it is, let's say the Coyotes fail. Let's say that they say no to this thing. At the very least, you hope that Arizona State, with their beautiful facility, and from the videos that I've seen posted to social media, is that their student section has been jam-packed to those games. At the very least, it gives Arizona State a boost, because they're showcasing their arena in front of a national audience. They're getting NHL games in there. They're getting their facility runs trial by fire. Holy buckets. Can you imagine being a facilities manager for that? Holy buckets for your first go round. But at the very least, you hope to create an excitement to the younger fan base, especially around Arizona State University, that can continue to grow the game in that market. And that's really why I want the Coyotes to stay. Now, granted, the ownership, I believe, I would love to see the ownership change, but that's out of our control. Because to me, I think that's, if it goes to the voters, I have a fearful of that, because Alex Mariuello does not have the best reputation in that state for being the best businessman in the world. Let's put it that way. So, do they trust him to do it? I don't know. And again, you talk about the last caps. You're right on this. If this doesn't go through, there is a probably more likely than not chance that this team is out of the state of Arizona. I just can't see them pushing or kicking the proverbial can down the road any further. I do think that this is where they move out of Arizona. If that's
I just think if you get this approved from Tempe in whatever fashion, Coyotes fans got to be at Mullet Arena. And when that new building is built, you got to be putting 17, 18, 19,000 people in that building. For sure 15 plus on most given nights, regardless of how good that team is.
And you got to be, and for the ownership side, you got to
bring them in.
You got to also spend your money too. Remember 2010? Was it 2010 they went to the West Final?
2012.
Okay. So I mean, it's 10 years. Wow. Goes by quick. But in hockey, that's not that long ago that they were a very competitive, good team, right?
Yeah.
That's the other side, is that if the fan base / the community embraces you, then you have to give it back too.
Right. And
that's the part that's been missing. I mean, let's be honest. When was the last time we saw the Arizona Coyotes as an organization really truly say, from what they're spending and some of the moves they make, they would say they are trying to be a competitive team? It's been a while.
Yeah, certainly has been a while, but competition is in full swing here on the Huskies Warming House podcast, apparently, but also otherwise in the college hockey world. I had fun. It's been a while since we've really gone at each other, so I had fun.
Yeah.
With that being said, men's hockey, a big battle for them, big test. They travel to Magnus Arena on Friday the 4th. Women's hockey will be traveling to Bemidji State the 4th and 5th, and then on Monday the 7th, Hall of Fame game for them. Pay attention to that. They'll be playing the Minnesota Golden Gophers. Minnesota Wild, only 2 contests for them coming up this week. Tuesday against Montreal, and I believe it's Thursday against Seattle. And that is it for them for the week, and that is it for us. For Nick Maxon, I'm Noah Grant, and we will see you soon. Have a wonderful and safe holiday of Halloween on this Monday. Stay safe. Make sure you don't do anything dumb, like argue with your friends on a podcast. We will see you soon in the den.
One-timer coming, they score! Ripped in! A bomb from Pervix!
So Dana Rasmussen fires and she scores! Dana Rasmussen for the Huskies along.
Dwayne Kaprizov in for a chance to win it! He scores! Kirill the Thrill is for real! Welcome to the NHL!
Cathedral is now 42.6 seconds away from wrapping up the school's first ever title.